Good deal. Good deal. So let's move along now to this depth chart talk. You know, sometimes we get comments where people are saying you're being too critical of Goody, you're being too critical of the roster. Other times that you guys are, you're just cup half full, sunshine and rainbows, all that stuff, right? Constantly. So I think the truth we try to have the truth lie somewhere in the middle. But I wanted to ask a question. Do you guys think this roster is elite if everybody's healthy? And again, I know that's a hard thing to do in the National Football League. It's hard to go through a full season and stay, nobody expects you to stay 100% healthy, but stay healthy to the point where it's like, wow, we stayed healthier than every other team. Therefore, we had the best shot to win the whole thing. How do we see this roster if everyone is healthy? Because again, we're running everything through the filter of how the season ended, where we had, 17 players on IR and a ton of starters and very, very important players. So I figured we would dive into everything. How would you rank the roster if everybody's healthy? Before we look at the depth chart in general, I want to get your take on it right out of the gate. Would you say it's elite? Would you say it's great? Would you say it's very good or good? Because I don't think it's anything below good, right?
I think that I would consider it great, minus maybe two major position groups.
Okay. So you're just two positions away from saying, hey, this could be an elite roster.
I think O-line and D-line are the thing that's holding us back.
Got it. Makes sense. It makes sense. Let me hit the super chat real quick. Mike Z, thank you so much. But he says, did we not release Aaron only to have him sign for the same money? We don't win at least 3 games. And who is his replacement and at what price? It's madness talking about the Josh Jacobs situation. And, you can kind of see it right here on the depth chart as we dive in at the running back position. I mean, you'll notice here too, the ones that are lit up in the bold black there, guys, that means they are restricted free agents. So another team can come in and get them if they want, right? But you've got to essentially, if you want them, you've got to hit them with a certain amount of an offer, which is now going to place value on that player, that if another team comes in and outbids you, they have to give up a pick that corresponds with the money they're willing to spend to outbid you, is the layman's way of saying it, right? So when he's talking about this whole thing with the running back position with Aaron, yes, Aaron Jones, it was $1 million difference is what it was. Basically, Minnesota paid Aaron Jones $1 million more was the last I heard reported on it, and that's what got it over the hump. Now, people said, well, Aaron should have stayed for that, but he had already taking a huge pay cut. It wasn't just like, oh, they asked him to take a $1 million pay cut. It was, here's the number we got you at, right? And then it's, okay, let's lower it down even more. And of course, the Vikings said, oh yeah, we'll give you that, because they cut him, and there was rumors they were going to bring him back, if I remember correctly. So it's a little bit deeper than just, what appears there on the surface. But at the same time, it's a perfect example of $1 million, Jacob. $1 million. And you could have had Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs, and guess what? Yeah, $1 million. By the way, if you look at it that way too, we had to really press into duo. We had to really press into some of the gap stuff in the inside zone a little bit more. If you keep Aaron Jones, you can keep that aspect of the outside zone running game, and that would have really been a nice change up against defenses. But again, man, it was Brian Gutekunst said it wasn't that important. Is essentially what it comes down to. So anyway, looking at the offensive depth chart here, let's just kind of start at the quarterback position. Jordan Love, of course, Malik Willis. If they're lit up green, that means they're unrestricted free agents, okay? So the guys in the green, expect them gone unless the Packers are willing to pay market value. Just run it through that filter, okay? Jordan Love, Desmond Ridder is essentially your quarterbacks, because Malik Willis is hitting free agency and probably going to get a good chunk of change, okay? When you move on to running back, which we were just talking about, you got Josh Jacobs, then you got Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks, which are both restricted free agents. Then you got Marshawn Lloyd. And it's wild that Marshawn Lloyd was he a second or a third round pick? He's a third round pick, right? Am I thinking right, Jacob?
It's a third, yeah.
Yeah. So Marshawn Lloyd being a third round pick, yeah, there it is right there, 24-3. So he was a third round pick in the 2024 draft, and he's fourth on your depth chart. I mean, why is that? Because he can't stay healthy. Why did we struggle last year? Because we couldn't stay healthy. And here you've got Josh Jacobs, who battled his ass off through a swollen knee week in and week out, and we're potentially talking about letting him go. You understand what I'm saying? It's like this whole idea, I'm going to just start calling it a conspiracy theory, that you got to get younger to stay healthy, because we have seen the opposite. when it comes to that type of results, I guess you could say. So what do you think about quarterback, running back here? Are you okay with Desmond Ridder? Or do you agree with me that we should probably take a swing in the 7th round on a quarterback and backup?
I think we should always take a swing. The best time to look for a quarterback is when you already have one. I think wasn't that kind of the Ron Wolf way of thinking? And that's why I've subtly mentioned that maybe we need a running back between the 5th and 7th round too. Just because if Emmanuel decides to take his talent somewhere else, if the Chris Brooks thing kind of falls through the cracks, even if it doesn't, and we obviously don't still know what we have in Lloyd in any kind of capacity for any amount of time, which is unfortunate because, the kid showed like he maybe had some pop, some razzle dazzle, something like that. But he just has not been able to be available. He can't make the club in the tub. So I'll tell you what, I was way more secure in our quarterback room this year and our running back room going into the year than I will be going into this next year. I'll say it that.
Yeah. Holmes MD1 says, I agree, Clay. I thought it was a poor decision on Jones. I know we got excited for like 30 seconds, Holmes, on this show. We were like, oh my God.
It was legit like 10 minutes. We were on cloud nine. And then
Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones on the same roster. Holy cow, we're about to run the rock. And Aaron Jones is gone. And he signed with the Vikings. Well, crap. Now, hindsight being 2020, did Aaron Jones dominate? He did not. But we know it would have been a different story in Green Bay with the system he was already kind of – now, there's similar systems with KOCs, but at the same time, he was already comfortable with what he was doing in Green Bay, right? So Chris Casuan says, I'd love to see Matt LaFleur partner with a real NFL GM. It seems like now that the dust has settled, there are more people that are kind of bleeding into the whole, is Goody actually the guy? It felt like Matt LaFleur took all that heat early, and I think people are realizing now that, hey, maybe this roster wasn't as fail safe as we thought it might be originally. Holmes makes a great point. If Lloyd is as advertised, the run game could be really, really good. It really could. I mean, he is a dynamic player. That wheel route that he got hurt on in the preseason, that was like, oh my God. If you've got a running back that can make that kind of play with that kind of burst and those kind of hands down the sideline and a tight window catch like that, that is a weapon. I mean, that is a weapon on offense. The problem is you got to stay on the field, man. Got to stay on the field. So when you look at this, I'm assuming that Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks will be back. They'll probably put a minimum tender on them and see if another team's willing to give up any kind of compensation or outbid them, But if you keep both those guys, the running back room, on one hand, you could say is set if Josh Jacobs is here too. However, if one or both of those guys leave the team, we're drafting a running back, Jacob. That's happening,
Yep.
So exactly what you were talking about the other day when we were breaking down the draft. So it's going to be interesting to see how that falls into place. Tight end, Tucker Kraft. Then you got John Fitzpatrick. Obviously, he is an unrestricted free agent. He's going to get to test the market. Then you got Luke Musgrave and Josh Wiley. I'm not as concerned about tight end, to be honest with you. I think Josh Wiley impressed me. If he's healthy, I think that guy he's a difference maker on this team. I don't think he's great by no stretch of the imagination, but I would consider him above average to good. And what else can you expect from a tight end? You don't want to go 3 or 4 deep at tight end when you're still playing 11 personnel as much as you are. Luke Musgrave, it is what it is. He's a receiving tight end. When he's schemed open, I think he's got good hands. Now you can't expect any yak at all, right? You're being unrealistic if you're expecting yak yards after the catch. But I can also see a situation that if John Fitzpatrick leaves in free agency and he gets an offer somewhere, and you go and get someone like Koziel out of Houston, right? Or someone like that would fall right in our lap. That could be an important aspect of the tight end position. So moving on to wide receiver, here's how the depth chart sits today. And again, this is before Romeo Doubs hits free agency, so there's going to be a void left here. They've got as and our lads does this a little bit different, okay? They're going to say left receiver, right receiver, slot receiver. If you guys watch this channel, we break down the tape pretty extensively. We talk all the time about, the X position, the Z position, the move Z, the F, which is the primary motion guy, right? Your F is essentially your slot, okay? That's Jaden Reed. And you're probably going, well, hold up a minute. I remember seeing Jaden Reed on the field, but Matthew Golden was the move guy, right? That's what we call the moving Z. And essentially, those two positions are interchangeable, right? You need players that can play. The F can be an outside receiver, and the Z can play the F or the slot. All right. And the reason we mention that is because there's going to be some situations where Jaden Reed is in the 2, right? So let's say you've got Matthew Golden in the 1, on the right. He's in the 1, and you've got Jaden Reed in the 2, which is technically the F. And then they cheat motion him outside, right, to get up the sideline. Well, guess what? Theoretically speaking, he's going to become the post-snap Z, even though he was the F. That's what we mean by those need to be 2 interchangeable positions. Romeo Doubs was your boundary X. When we say boundary, that's the short side of the field, okay? You'll hear field side and boundary. Boundary is short side of the field. Field side is the large side of the field, meaning you're on the left hash. It would be field side right, okay? So Romeo is in that phone booth in the boundary. I think personally that our boy Golden is going to take over that spot for our boy Romeo Doubs. Okay, so just keep that in mind right there. So they've got Matthew Golden listed as the backup left receiver behind Christian Watson, when essentially I think he's going to take Romeo Doubs' spot, which they've got listed as R. But again, that's going to be the boundary X position. So when you look at the receivers and the tight ends, Jacob, Tucker Kraft's your starting tight end. You're probably going to have Christian Watson on one side, Matthew Golden on the other, and Jaden Reed in the slot. Everybody seems to be healthy, good to go. We just got to get Tucker back, of course, from the ACL, and I think that will happen. All signs are pointing to that. How do you feel about the tight end and the wide receiver room with what we got in 11 personnel as it sits?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of our strongest 2 groups, if not our 2 strongest. Wide receiver room, even with a lot of like you said, the injuries on and off this last year, even if we end up losing Dobby, I do think that's still the top 5 are going to be as good as any top 5 in this league. I'll go pound for pound for that. Tight end room, like you said, as soon as we get a good, healthy Tech Norris back, I think that he's a top 3, if not best tight end in the league. And if Musgraves even takes a small little step, if Wiley can get healthy and be kind of more of that traditional, more blocking, athletic type of tight end, and then like you said, if we get a Koziel, who's the guy from Tennessee, that like Kittleson or Kittle Middleton or something like that, he's another big guy from Tennessee, tight end.
You're talking about Kitzelman, Miles
Kitzelman. Yeah.
So, he's interesting, man, because some people got him as a late round prospect, and others are going, man, this might be one of the better blocking tight ends in the league.
Yeah. So, yeah, if we could address it and just kind of round out the room a little bit in the draft, I wouldn't be mad at that whatsoever. I wouldn't even be mad if they took like a late round receiver who maybe is more of a return man early in his career, or if maybe that's his only role. So, but all in all, I think that those are one of our 2 strongest groups right there, both of those.
Yeah. J. Cole says, Goot, quote, "We got to start winning Super Bowls," end of quote. Proceeds to cut every player over 30 years old.
Yep.
It's frustrating. Mike Z says in the chat, "Do we think Wicks is a good option, Clayton?" I think Wicks is a good option. I think he's one of the better backup receivers in the league. I wouldn't – now, he may get starting reps right out of the gate over Matthew Golden. If he does, people are going to march on 1265. I promise you that. Because, again – the thing about Dontavion Wicks, he's got good size. His hands have improved tremendously. And I know he had a couple drops last year, but his hands got a lot better last year. He's one of the best route running wide receivers in the league. So in the phone booth at the X position is where I think he would do his most damage. So maybe they slide Dontavion Wicks into Romeo Doubs' spot as he hits free agency. And now Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, and Christian Watson are constantly rotating. It could be the case. I don't think Dontavion Wicks will get more snaps than those other 3 guys. But Dontavion Wicks has played the F as well. Although, when people were complaining last year because Bo Melton got so many snaps, the reality is the reason he got so many snaps is because Jaden Reed was out, and he was the one who knew the offense the most to come in and play the F spot. Because with the F position, guys, there's choice routes all over this offense for Matt LaFleur. Meaning if the defense does this, I'm actually going to break the route off at 6 yards as opposed to 8 yards. Or I'm going to run a post instead of a dig. Like there's choice aspects. Matthew Golden didn't catch on to that stuff quick enough last year. Okay. That's why it looked like, wow, we're underutilizing him. Well, he's running the wrong routes. He's running them at the wrong depth. He's not breaking that choice route off in the right spot. They couldn't get on the same page. We used to rake Aaron Rodgers' ass over the coals for that, going, well, he's being too picky. He's being too picky. No. That's the details that go into NFL level offenses. It's just a reality of the NFL and what's going on today. Like, why did Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce have so much success? Because they were completely on the same page, and 95% of the routes that Kelce ran were choice routes. He just go out there and read the DB, and Pat Mahomes knew exactly what he was going to do based off of the depth in which that DB was playing. Was he playing outside leverage or inside leverage? All those things, right? So not to geek out too much over the X's and O's and everything, but that's why Bo Melton was thrust in, because they knew he would run the right route. The problem is he was dropping passes because he's there's a reason they try to play him at cornerback, right? He's not a great receiver. He's not a great cornerback. He's just kind of a tweener with everything. And it's a valuable piece, and he's a great special teams player. Or is he? Because everybody hated special teams, right? He's supposedly our best special teams player, but we thought the special teams were cheap. So how great is he? You know what I mean? All these questions come into factor when it comes to the wide receiver room. But I think Wicks is a good option, Mike. I would just consider him the fourth best receiver on this team. And I want those three out there: Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Matthew Golden. I want them on the field the large majority of the time. That's kind of the way I see that. So moving on to offensive line, I know people in the chat were talking about that it doesn't matter what, the wide receivers do and this and that and what the running backs do if the offensive line is going to be cheeks. Right now, as it sits today, left tackle, Rasheed Walker is set to hit free agency, okay? They've got Aaron Banks at left guard still, Elton Jenkins at center. Sean Ryan is set to hit free agency. They had him listed as the starting right guard, although Anthony Belton kind of took that role over last year, whether you think he played horrible like PFF said, or you think he played better like others that watched the tape thought he played a little bit better than what PFF gave him credit for. He will probably be your starting right guard. Zach Tom is your right tackle. Jordan Morgan, I think, will slide right into that left tackle spot and take over for Rasheed Walker, although our lads has Darian Kennard as the backup left tackle. So obviously that's a little off, in my opinion. So again, your offensive line, Jacob, as it sits today on February 19th, is going to be Jordan Morgan left tackle, Aaron Banks left guard, Elton Jenkins center, Anthony Belton right guard, and Zach Tom right tackle. I don't feel great about that offensive line.
Nope, I do not either. I think that's our most glaring position group that we need to work on. And that's why, a lot of people have maybe gotten frustrated with certain draft picks that we've done in the mocks, or maybe the certain ways that we've tried to highlight the offseason for free agency. I think you'll have to see why there. I mean, you could argue that obviously I don't expect us to have Walker back. I would argue that it would be nice if we could cut Banks, free up some cap room, and, kind of wash that away. We could argue that Elton may not be on this team and Sean Ryan couldn't be on the team. That's 4 out of the 5 positions that you have to at least replace with people that either haven't played that position lately or it's not their preferred spot. So, yeah, in a perfect world, we go out and we get a Linderbaum in free agency, and then we draft a Jennings Dunker, and then we'd get like a Logan Jones or something like that, Bo Stevens, somebody like that. Just, the odds of that happening are about as good as me strapping up and being drafted by the Packers myself. So I just don't see that happening. So we got to do a lot of work in the offseason to just make this front five be formidable to even get us through the beginning of the year, let alone, catapult us into maybe what should be a playoff run, a window of maybe 2 to 3 years, where if we can't get our offensive line stapled down and have the foundation of our team, that window is going to close pretty quickly, and it's going to make a lot of people very upset. I know that.
Yeah, and listen, it's hard to defend how the offensive line is built when you look back on how we approached it last year. We said it was a top priority. Goody agreed, and we know that because he went out and spent a ton of money on Aaron Banks at left guard, and he spent a second-round pick on Anthony Belton, which we've shown time and time again was one hell of a reach according to our PTA big board. We had him in the 120 spot, and Goody took him in the second round. He passed over Ozzie Trapillo, who ended up, I think he was 76 on our board, if I remember correctly, and he ended up being a great football player, one of the highest-graded rookie offensive linemen in the entire National Football League for the Chicago Bears. You literally said, nope, we want Belton over Trapillo, and then you also said you want Golden over Burden, and Burden had a better year. Doesn't mean that either of those players aren't going to be great, but it's just a tough look, man, because now you're looking up going, Goody took his swing. He took 2 swings. He said, I'm going to shear this thing up right now. I'm going to go get Aaron Banks, swing and a miss. I'm going to go get Anthony Belton, at least for the time being, swing and a miss. So only time will tell if it actually works out. But if you guys are watching this video back later, let us know in the comments, how do you feel about the offensive depth chart? Is there something we missed there? Maybe you feel good about the offensive line, man. We can agree to disagree. Let us know in the comments. What do you think's the biggest need? What do you think's the biggest strength? Also, let us know how you feel about Josh Jacobs, like that previous segment. I'm curious to know if people would rather just move on from him or if they want to keep him on the roster. It's definitely a keep for me, but we want to hear from you guys. Make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe, click the bell icon as well.